Welcome to our channel. Please click subscribe button to see more content like this. Today we will tell about Colombian serial killer Luis Garavito, known as the Beast. Garavito was a sex offender and necrophile who murdered over 138 minors, mostly boys, in Colombia in 1999. Local newspapers were describing him as the scariest serial killer of all times. Let's talk about the childhood of this monster. Garavito was born in Colombia on January 25, 1957. The identity of his mother is unknown. Research indicates that his mother was a sex worker. Garavito and his mother were both subjected to physical violence by his father. His father forced Garavito, who was still a child, to watch his mother while she was engaging in work as a prostitute. His mother was a drug addict. She did not speak out about what her husband did to her son. Garavito couldn't stand his father's tortures anymore and ran away from home and tried to survive on the streets. When he was 8 years old, a man invited him to his house, offering him food and shelter. This house, which he believed could be his salvation, would be a hell for Garavito, who was sexually assaulted for 3 days. Garavito escaped from there 3 days later and came under the protection of a gang. At a small age, he became involved in crimes such as robbery and assault. Years passed. He had started doing regular jobs. He had traveled over Colombia and worked in various jobs. He had a girlfriend named Teresa. According to Garavito's friends, he was a very kind person but got angry easily. Luis started committing his murders in 1992. He was very methodical. The victims he targeted were very specific: homeless children between the ages of 6 and 16. He would approach lonely children in crowded streets or in the countryside and attract them by offering them money, candy, or other gifts. He usually offered them simple but rewarding so-called jobs. He introduced himself as a priest, a homeless man, or a drug dealer. He was very cunning. He constantly disguised himself and was also a good liar. After gaining the children's trust, he would drag them to a deserted place where he had been walking for a long time, and then he would first tie their hands, then take off all their clothes and torture them. He would attack them and cut off their limbs before killing them. All bodies found by the police were completely naked. Their limbs were cut off and they were tortured for a long time. Empty alcohol bottles were also found at the scenes of the murder. We will talk about these later. Boys between the ages of 6 and 16 started disappearing in the streets of Colombia starting from 1992. For decades, the number of orphans due to the war was quite high. Murders committed by Garavito went unnoticed for years, as no one reported anything to the police about the disappearance of the victims. The dead children had no families. Police found dead bodies spread over wider areas, not in a certain area. Therefore, a large-scale investigation began. In February 1998, 2 children's bodies were found near the town of Genova. Another body was found a few meters away the following day. All 3 bodies had their hands tied. Their necks were injured and their limbs were torn off. A murder weapon was found in the same area. A note with an address on it was pasted on the weapon. The address belonged to Garavito's girlfriend. His girlfriend was contacted. She told the police that she had not seen Garavito for months. To help the police, she gave them some of Garavito's belongings that included photographs of children, diaries detailing the murders, and some invoices. The invoices would lead the police to his house, but the house was empty. It was by a chance that he was found a few days later. He was caught by a police officer on charges of rape. He was reported to police by a homeless man. Local police took him to the police station for interrogation, and he was taken into custody. What they didn't know was that they had caught Colombia's cruelest serial killer. He stood trial on April 22, 1999, and refused to plead guilty, but the police were convinced that he was the murderer, yet he continued to claim his innocence. He even started crying during the interrogations. The investigations were continuing. A small detail that emerged later would ensure that he would be found guilty.
¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? No, no, no quiero más.
His spectacles were made of a special glass, the same glass that had been found at crime scenes. At the same time, DNA samples found on alcohol bottles found in crime scenes proved his involvement in those crimes. Later confessions started coming one by one. He confessed that he took the lives of 140 children, but he was accused of killing 172 people and was found guilty of abetment. However, his sentence was limited to 40 years due to the Colombian law. At the same time, his sentence was reduced to 22 years for helping the police locate the bodies. This may be a ridiculous sentence considering the scope and gravity of his crimes. Handing over 22 years to someone who murdered 138 minors is injustice to say the least.
Garavito is currently in one of Colombia's highest security prisons and is being held separately from other prisoners. This is because prisoners might try to kill him. He will be released on parole in 2023, but according to the Colombian law, this should not be possible for crimes committed against children. He must spend at least 60 years in prison. But this is impossible because Garavito received a 22-year prison sentence. Many Colombians believe that Garavito's sentence was not a sufficient punishment for his crimes.
This public discontent was taken into consideration, and the maximum penalty for such crimes has been increased to 60 years. It is still unclear whether Garavito will be released or not. Garavito is among the most notorious serial killers of all time.